Hi guys, it's PS. Last game we told you the basics of mid lane from Chovy's gameplay. The video wasn't just from one gameplay, but it's from so many games that we collected common habits of Chovy. Since the video got longer, we could only use one gameplay which did not incorporate our whole purpose.
미니언들이 생성되었습니다.
So we're here with 3 more solo rank gameplays of Chovy. Let's start with Chovy's Irelia against Griffin Nahan. The main theme of this video is lane management. How can Chovy have such high average CS? And how can he almost never get too screwed in lane? One of the reasons is lane management. Let's learn from Chovy's lane management skills. Before we start, we need to be aware of Nahan with magic resist on his runes, since he thought it was Zoe mid and Irelia bot. In early lane, Akali is on a higher ground with Q and passive, since it's hard to maintain full passive stacks on Irelia. Irelia has to stall until she can stack her passive. So instead of farming all the CS, Chovy pretends to last hit minion and dodge Akali's ability. Chovy actually mentioned about this play on this interview in Kespa Cup after Spear Gaming's game. He likes to either trade in his advantage, while both of them have to last hit a minion or dodge enemies' abilities like this moment. It seems that Akali is in advantage, but Chovy can push the wave and stack his passive while maintaining his health with biscuits and a corrupting potion. When he checked that Akali learned her E at level 2 and did not clear the wave, he pushes the wave with full passive stacks as soon as Akali uses her E. Generally, there are 2 ways to burn minion waves: freeze the wave and deny minions with caster minions, or push hard and use the turret. Chovy prefers to push the wave like 9 out of 10 games. Instead of freezing the wave and denying minions, he likes to push in order to recall earlier, buy an item whenever he wants to, and minimize the CS loss. Freezing the wave on your side to deny and threaten enemy with a gank is a good strategy, but keep in mind that Chovy prefers to get advantages from pushing. You will watch this playstyle throughout the entire video. To further analyze his playstyle, not only pushing the wave first and roaming with jungle is more important in current meta, but also freezing the wave forces you to stay in mid and can't roam to other lanes first. Chovy probably thinks that this is very critical in solo rank with restricted communication. Back to the game, Chovy pressures the wave with full passive stacks until 3:15 to either recall or have a scuttler fight. It's also easier to push waves since the enemy jungle is Graves, who doesn't have much gank pressure, and Nidalee is better in this jungle matchup. If you see the current situation, Irelia is keeping full passive stacks, and Akali can't win a trade with magic resist rune. In solo rank, you can easily check other players' runes on any summoner search websites. Even though you don't use any websites, you can click enemies' champions and check the stats. These small things may matter as you climb higher. To summarize, this lane matchup is won by these many small things. Due to the champion matchup, Chovy seemed to be losing in level 1, but with adaptive rune advantage, better jungle champion matchup, push priority with full passive stacks, and securing a scuttler first, mid jungle priority is already on Chovy's side. Chovy recalls as he watches Nidalee taking a bot side scuttler. This happens right when the first wave is cleared and second wave is at the halfway. 10 to 15 seconds after the second wave is spawned, where the wave is at the halfway, is the first recall timing. We will define some terms before we move forward. Cannon wave is spawned every 3 waves. So let's define the waves by first, second, and third waves. We'll explain what this first recall timing means in the practice mode. After pushing the first wave, the second wave arrives mid at around 3:30. A champion with 335 movement speed takes around 23 to 28 seconds to get back to mid. Considering 8 seconds of recall duration, we know that it takes at most 36 seconds to get back to mid after hitting a recall button. If you recall at 3:15, you lose about 2 minions. If you don't even want to lose any, then you need to recall when the second wave is spawned. But most champions do not have a good wave clear early, and a scuttler is spawned at 3:15. So think about investing those 2 minions lost to get early mid jungle priority. Our first goal is to recall when the second wave is passing the mid wave. Once the game passes the 10-minute mark, minions move faster. But it's also easier to find the recall timing since you'll have a better wave clear. Also, a better recall timing than this is when you push the second wave to the turret, which will be explained later. Chovy usually recalls at 2 timings. The first timing is when the second wave is at the midway, just what we explained. The second timing is when you push the second wave to the turret, which was explained on the previous pros habit. Keep in mind the second timing and watch the rest of the video. As you see, this recall timing helps his jungler as well as minimizing the CS loss. And this timing is weirdly odd that it's when most junglers finish farming their jungle camps. Meaning that this is when you can use the map wider with your jungle. We'll fast forward a little bit. Right now, he's recalling when the second wave is at the midway while he can possibly roam bot. But he changes his mind and pushes to another wave. You can minimize CS loss by pushing the second wave, and Irelia can push the wave fast and avoid Graves' gank, so he'll push this and recall. Also, pushing the second wave to the turret means he can recall before the third wave reaches the mid. He is now recalling after pushing. So he almost always recalls at the either 2 situations we mentioned earlier. Fast forwarding again, once he comes back to the wave, he usually fast pushes after slow pushing 2 waves, but Graves is covering mid to prevent the push. Now you can kinda know when he will recall. Especially, this recall timing is even better against champions with bad wave clear that you won't lose any CS by your turret. You can deny enemy's minions by using the cannon and the first waves. By this, enemy will waste at least 3 minions and at most 1 whole wave. Let's see if it really happens. By lane management, you can gradually have a CS advantage. Also, enemy mid is vulnerable to a gank or a roam at this lane. After holding 2 waves, he pushes. He attempted to roam top, but Mordekaiser was recalling, so he takes a Scuttle instead. This is possible since Akali is held at mid, and Nidalee was around topside. Once again at mid, he pushes the wave instead of last hitting minions. The wave would have been pushed to him, but with a Scuttler and a lane management, he is 1 level ahead. Then he finally grabs a solo kill. Now mid is over. He's recalling after pushing the second wave. Let's move to the next game. Second game is also Irelia, but against the mage champion Syndra, who has a long range. Focus on lane management again with first, second, and third wave and recall timing. If he plays like the last game, he's supposed to recall around 3:15 as he watches the Scuttler when the second wave is passing the midway. Which is exactly the same. He watches Kindred as he recalls. The result is almost the same as last game. 1 CS loss from minions and another loss from his turret. Then it's the same afterward, slow push for 2 waves, fast push, then get side visions. He got 2 waves, so he's pushing as he plans a possible fight. He heads to bot, but nothing happens, so he backs to mid. When is the next recall timing? He tries to recall when the second wave is at the mid wave. However, Syndra doesn't have much health and mana, and the enemy jungle is shown at bot, so he pushes the second wave and recalls. If you are low and out of mana, and the enemy pushes the second wave, what would you do? You can't just recall, cause then you'll waste the entire wave. You need to clear the wave in order to minimize your loss. But since you're low and out of mana, you're vulnerable to a gank or a dive. Regardless of those pressures, since Irelia recalls first, you'll lose a lane priority. We'll stop watching this game and continue with his mid Nocturne for the last game. Unlike the first two matchups, enemy mid has a teleport. Nocturne has a very good early wave clear. With his push priority, he takes an ignite to secure mid priority. Based on what we watched, Chovy likes to snowball with advantages he gets by pushing and recalling first. Because of that, he prefers to play champions with strong lane pressure, and the current meta requires mid priority even more. Chovy starts with a ward at enemy's red and plans his moves. Since early Nocturne can push faster and stronger than Katarina, only he can push the wave. He also has a lifesteal on passive, so you don't need to be afraid of pushing. Katarina also has a teleport instead of ignite. Chovy pushes the wave first and shows himself walking to enemy's raptors. He can do this because first, his jungle is Olaf, who can start blue and backs him up to the red. Elise does not know where Olaf started, and she can't risk everything and go to her red without mid priority. And if Olaf started her red, she would be totally screwed. The other reason is that Nocturne is a jungle champion with a very fast jungling with his passive. So he doesn't lose any minions and only has to use one corrupting potion. Last, in red team's perspective, Nocturne could possibly roam top. As you can see, they are pinging top and Camille has to be alert in the lane. All in all, this one simple raptor move puts a huge pressure on the enemy team. Elise is pinging danger at her red right now. Vision might be taken, mid is getting pressured, and the enemy jungle is Olaf. Elise can't go to her topside jungle until she sees Olaf. Meanwhile, Nocturne can sustain in lane with his passive and corrupting potion, and he has a huge mid priority. Since Chovy had magic resist, nullifying orb, W ability at level 2, and ignite, he knew that he won't lose. The recall timing right now is not what Chovy wants. It doesn't belong to two cases that we mentioned before, but he has to recall since Katarina used TP. Likewise, if enemy has a TP and you don't, it's pretty tough to have a good recall timing. But now was the best time to minimize his loss due to a TP. Thus, the two cases we mentioned earlier are applied when both mid have TP or both don't. If only one has a teleport, there is a variation. Meantime, Elise is heading bot since she couldn't easily go to his topside jungle, and she successfully kills Olaf. Let's talk about what happened at bot by Chovy's snowball earlier. So far, Olaf hasn't been spotted until he finished his columns. Olaf planned to gank bot earlier, but Elise didn't plan it. She was farming toward topside, but why would she head bot when Olaf hasn't even been spotted? Because she wasn't sure if Olaf is at her red or his red. So she chose to go bot to minimize her risk even though she takes a loss on jungle route. She faces Olaf and gets a kill, which was a lucky counter gank. If this was a pro game, Chovy probably had more shot calling, and Olaf pressured an enemy more with vision advantage. Back to Chovy. Olaf has to enemy red since Elise will take a while. He could do that because they had top and mid priorities. The variance was supporters though. We need to observe two things on the minimap. First, Thresh is covering their red since Olaf could come. Shen is heading top a little too late. And Chovy is positioning on the top side since Elise can come from bot, and he actually retreats to the top side as Elise ganks. Red team played pretty aggressively since Thresh was also coming, but it didn't go as they planned. They can still fight at top side, but Chovy pushes the wave instead of covering the fight. He can push 2 waves including the cannon minion, and he will be late by the time he arrives. After pushing all the waves, he decides to roam. Katarina is forced to be in mid, so only he can roam. Rumble uses teleport as well, but the fight doesn't go so well, and Katarina gives up some CS and backs up, which results in a loss in the fight. However, even though they lost a fight, it's important to note that he minimized the loss by lane management, which is the main point of today's video. In fact, he dies once, but he still has about 1 wave advantage in CS, and Katarina gave up some CS, so mid wave is tilted on red team side. This way, the wave will be pushed to blue team side, which means Katarina will lose even more CS. In other words, Chovy is still good in lane after losing the fight. Katarina knew it and decided to push the wave, but since her wave clear is pretty bad, Chovy did not lose a single CS. Also, he could push the next wave first, so Katarina will be forced to be in mid. Then Chovy can push the wave first and roam as he prefers. For Katarina, she has to farm and play based on Nocturne's moves, just like the earlier games. This is a common playstyle of Chovy from a lot of his solo ranked games. Roaming or getting visions after pushing the cannon wave, which is the rule of thumb. Right now, since the bot side has no vision and his bot is pushed, he is getting topside vision. Then, even though Elise has all the camps on her top side, she heads to bot to minimize her risk. So far, from 3 games of Chovy, we went over Chovy's lane management and recall timing. His habit is pretty obvious. Pick a champion with push priority so he can push first and watch a scuttler. Recall at 2 cases to minimize CS loss, either when the second wave is at the halfway, or fast push the second wave to the turret. Then he repeats the slow push 2 waves and fast push to get side visions in order to have more influence in the game. Today's pros habit, we went over Chovy's lane management. Next, we'll come back with supporters tips. Thank you for watching and hopefully this helps.
도저히 막을 수 없어.